we all sat together and said, look, there's still a lot we don't know. We don't know elevations. Those elevations will give us cues to structural engineering requirements. The soil test is happening now. As I said, there's ingredients we don't know yet, but of what we do know, we've now moved within a confidence level that allows us to proceed to the next stage of planning, but continue to hold everything lightly because we don't know what we don't know.
When you've been having those conversations with the builder about the budget, and you said the builder's been really good at kind of going, well, a house of like this has been, is sort of around this. Have you seen the builder kind of benchmarking that? What kind of evidence has the builder given you to help you trust that you're getting realistic costing feedback at this point in the game?
Yeah, we're pretty lucky, I think, that the builder, and we knew this before we decided to bring him into the team, but has been collecting data for a really long time. And that's serving really useful because we've got these two dimensions, and at the moment it's a spatial plan, but square meterage, as Lou said, can be a bit of a blunt instrument. But if you overlay that with kind of a data-driven estimation of what fittings and fixtures might cost when, because we're starting to bring in imagery that gives a sense of inspiration to what the place might look like and the quality. That's been quite helpful. So rather than purely it's this big, so it might cost that much, we're starting to overlay it with, well, I've actually built about 4 houses that are of a similar spec and quality to what you're undertaking. And based on that, naturally an outdoor area is going to be a certain expanse, and a bathroom will probably cost more than a hallway. But when we look at averages at this early stage, there's also this kind of quality dimension that fortunately, I think a lot of builders are doing this now, but for quite a while, our builder's been building a bit of a bank of these are the real final costs. Here's the final cost data on jobs I've successfully completed, and that gives me a really strong sense. And what's really nice is then when it's not pitched as a absolute science, so he's not coming back and saying, this is an exact number. There's always going to be wiggle room, but in comparing that and bringing the architect in, the architect's sort of looking at what the builder's bringing forth and saying, I think it's pretty bang on. I think he's pretty accurate. I've built particular houses of the same spec and they did cost about that much per square meter when I thought about fixtures and fittings. So we're using it as a guide, and I think it's about confidence levels. So we've had rounds of spatial plans, and about 2 to 3 weeks ago, we all sat together and said, look, there's still a lot we don't know. We don't know elevations. Those elevations will give us cues to structural engineering requirements. The soil test is happening now. As I said, there's ingredients we don't know yet, but of what we do know, we've now moved within a confidence level that allows us to proceed to the next stage of planning, but continue to hold everything lightly because we don't know what we don't know, and because the house is 101 years old, we're still a long way from learning our biggest surprises. So let's not exhaust our budget in this plan because you still need space. But I found that's been useful guardrails, because if we're nowhere near, then we'd rather make big decisions now when it costs less than, feel like we're backed into a corner further down the line.
Yeah, and less emotionally attached and time attached to the design as well. So in regards to the fact that it is obviously the renovation of an older home, and some of the, I've seen the initial kind of concepts that you're sort of moving through in terms of what the floor plan's roughly looking like. What has been the decision-making about the existing house? And I suppose, firstly, the investigation of what the existing house is like and what might need to be done to make it livable longer term, because I know we were talking about thermal properties and we were talking obviously just about standard maintenance and rectification work. that, I suppose, the investigation of that and the thinking about that, as well as how cost is being thought about for how you might be reconfiguring the spaces in the existing home to then deliver the overall design outcome. How's that been sort of negotiated and navigated through in this part of the process?
Yeah, well, we've had early stage conversations with the builder to say we think we will probably have to, change most of the electrics, do some pretty significant work on all the plumbing. So we want all of that work factored in from the get-go. And if we get a nice surprise that it's not as extensive as we think, then that's great. But he has also factored in taking off all of the external weatherboards across the entire house, and insulating those and replacing all of them. So we're hoping that we don't need to replace every single weatherboard, but we think we'll probably have to replace most of them. So we've factored that all in. Internally, we've tried where possible to maintain at least the front part of the house, to maintain existing walls where we can. So we've managed to maintain kind of the first front 3 rooms. The front bathroom, we're just extending. So maintaining the bulk of that room, but extending one wall, and similarly to the second bedroom, extending that wall out. So it doesn't help our budget that we do want to insulate most of the house. So unfortunately, every room will probably need to be touched in some way. But wherever possible, we've tried to kind of reduce that as much as we can by keeping the existing structure of the walls. Can you think of any other conversations we've had?
Unwrapping the house.
Yeah.
And then the back, I guess we've got more opportunity to then open it up. And that was part of the conversation, where fortunate from a kind of house to land size ratio, we've got the space, and that really helped us probably recognize, even with the style of the house as well. And there's a lot of nature that surrounds the house, and a big part of the brief was the connection to nature, not just at the back door, but throughout the design. And it nearly became a design choice to say we actually prefer the way that the house hugs the ground, and that you do have that green outside every window. So we've decided to kind of go back and wider with the back of the house, and obviously you're a bit liberated once you get past the boundary of our existing. So I'd say we've probably tried to keep 80% of our walls intact. And then we've got the opportunity to sort of get a bit more creative as we get to the tail end of the house. But what we probably, in a previous renovation, we had that really obvious transition point where we went from a 30s Art Deco sort of straight to modern, whereas I think we're wanting to nod to the heritage of the house front to back this time. So probably a nice surprise or a pleasing outcome is that our architect is also an interior designer. So having that mindset while doing this early work definitely helps, because it's firstly, it's one less person in the team, but it's also not there's that kind of interior aspect certainly isn't an afterthought, because you've got the same individual doing that work.
Does the existing house have original cornices and skirtings and things like that? So has there been discussions about what you'll do when you need to move walls, and obviously then demolish and replace parts of cornices and those kinds of things?
I would say where the majority of our most ornate work are the areas we're touching the least, and we're pretty intentional about making sure that we could sort of preserve those spaces. And you can't see it, but even the room through to the right of us here at the moment is this extra living room that has a fireplace, and it's probably the prettiest room in terms of that ceiling roses and cornices, and we've actually kept the entire structure of that the same, but it's actually now repurposed in a way that it turns into a kind of a retreat that is also part of our walk-in robe that eventually will turn into an ensuite. So I think where the most ornate work is, we've done our best to not touch it. And then the newer areas, that's probably a discussion still to have to sort of work out, are we trying to match like for like, or are we just looking to ensure it's complementary in its flow? And flow is an interesting word because we were talking about that last night. It's sort of maybe one of those examples of too soon to ask the question or too soon to talk about, but we've made sure that furniture is in the plan just so you get a sense of how you move through the space. And as we look at it at the moment, we're like, oh, is that couch plonked there for the sake of the plan, or is that actually going to be there? Because if it's actually going to be there, I'm not sure how I'd get outside. So, maybe too soon, but we're just working through those sorts of considerations as well at the moment. But as we previously said, doesn't hurt to ask. And I don't think any of us have any fear of looking stupid. So we're just putting the questions out there, and hopefully we'll solve them at the right time.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, when I saw your plans, I was like, yeah, there's a north point on it and there's furniture in it. We've already solved, some of the significant problems that people are having when they're looking at whether their floor plans are working or not. So, and I imagine that the sofa that you're talking about is sort of the big kind of curved L shape sort of sofa that's in the main living area. So, which when you started talking about sunken lounges, I was like, oh, is that why the architect has done that kind of big, sort of big sofa like that? So I think the main thing is obviously it does indicate that you'll be able to fit a 3-seater and a 2-seater sofa, on a kind of L shape there, or a corner lounge, like a modular of some sort, and it be sufficiently sized. And what I liked about the concept was that even at this stage, which is obviously what we always encourage inside home method, things like your kitchen design, your kitchen's showing where the intention is for appliances and the fridge and that kind of stuff. A lot of mistakes that homeowners make with their designers is that at that concept stage, the kitchen's being drawn really generically, and they're not informing it with, we want wall ovens, or we want underbench ovens, we want a 900 oven or a 900 cooktop, or we want double ovens, or we want a steamer as well as a coffee maker. And so this kitchen gets drawn generically without being led by any of those conversations about the details of appliances, and then it's left until they're starting to do joinery drawings, and then all of a sudden those things actually don't fit in the way that the kitchen has ended up in the design, and it's very difficult to retrospectively then try and squeeze those things in. So I really liked the way that that's being thought about even at this stage in the concepts. And as you said, you haven't moved into elevations yet, and that will start to massage some of these things. And of course, doing the review based against your cost and needing to pull some cost out still is going to naturally massage some of this stuff as well. So have you found, like, how quickly did you get to the design concept that you've shared with me? Because the design concept you've shared with me, as I said, you still feel that you've got to get some money out of it, and you're at the point where you feel you can move into elevations and getting some structural design input. How long did it, how many iterations did it take you to get to here, and sort of what were you looking at as you were navigating that and weighing up the decisions about as you were moving through?
Gosh, I'm trying to think. So we started, would it have been February, March?
A bit later, yeah.
Yeah, maybe March. So what are we in now? We're in July. So March to July, I think we've probably had maybe 3 formal iterations. Would you say that's right?
Yeah.
But lots and lots of little bits and pieces along the way. And to be honest, we're still changing things. Like just last night, I don't know if this is an architect's worst nightmare. It probably is. But just last night, I was like looking at the powder room thinking, actually, I don't want it facing that way, because when you walk in, you'll be able to see the toilet immediately. So we're still kind of tweaking, and the kitchen is still not in the the way that we want. We don't want the fridge where the fridge is currently positioned in the kitchen. So thank you for saying that, because that's something that we need to really chat to the designer about sooner rather than later, I think.
Yeah, well, I think that was the appliance positions. I think he was sort of saying they can be figured in different ways. And he said, to be fair, he said, let's have a really detailed kitchen conversation I want to make sure you've got all the right spaces. And he was even saying, just spend time in your own current kitchen and think about its deficits. Think about, from a space point of view, what do you struggle with the positioning of appliances? Get all that knowledge, because at the moment I'm confident we've got the real estate to change the positioning of some of those appliances. I think we've got the space for the amount of appliances you would need in your kitchen. But he's like, it was funny too, because he's like, who's the cook? Because I want to talk to the cook about the way the kitchen is laid out, because too often I talk to the wrong person and that causes me trouble down the line. So
Zane is definitely the cook.
So we will get to that. They're there. But I think there's a dedicated conversation to have around those appliance placements. But I think even in our own admission, the latest change that we've made to the spatial plan was actually something that was present on the round one plan. So there's a certain graciousness that the architect has afforded us when I gave him a call and said, actually, at the moment, if someone was to come from, if we end up with a pool out the back, the kids would have to go all the way through the house into a powder room and everything will be wet and muddy. And we really think that back area probably maybe the fourth bedroom needs a bathroom to service it, but that bathroom could have an exterior door that allows you to go straight from the pool to the bathroom. And he sort of smiled and said, similar to round one. I'm like, yeah, quite similar to round one. So, but I think the other part too is just that open-mindedness of sometimes you want the feedback of your friends and family and other times you don't. You're investing so much and everyone wants to see where you're up to and where your plans are. But, it was really great a couple of weeks ago that we were showing where we were up to family, and one of Lou's brothers just sort of said, I know you're using it the way that your family will use it, but if you were selling this house, I'm not sure that you're servicing those bedrooms well enough. And kind of gave us feedback that you you just sit with it for a bit and then you're like, actually, I think he's right. And I think we need to listen to that and reconsider. So, I think that's a hard part too. You're so invested that you want to show people, but then when you do show people, they give you feedback and you got to work out if you want it or not. But we're lucky every time we've shown someone a plan. I think because they can imagine walking through it, they just offer a little gem to say, this is unexpected for me and I'd probably do it differently. And because we're not locking things away, it's sort of the ability to say, actually, there's something in that and we probably should have the conversation. And the team's been really good. I don't feel apprehension to call them and say, we've had another thought. Is there merit? And actually with both builder and architect, we went and visited previous builds of theirs, and we also spoke to a couple of their past clients. And with the architect in particular, one of his past clients said, we really love that he'll listen and engage and entertain or see through an idea we might have to share. But equally, if it's not a great idea, you'll know. And we've seen that. It's been really good that sometimes we'll go, we're thinking this. And he's like, that's great. Let's go when we're away. And other times he's like, no. And I'll tell you why. So I think that's healthy. That's why we're working with an architect. So, that's what we're learning.
And so in regards to that, obviously having the room to give that feedback and amend the design as you go, how is that working with your anticipated timeline and what your builder and your architect have both said to you about, okay, to meet your expectations in regards to a construction start of X, this is the timeline of progress? How is that? Because that to me is the crunchy point of having this flexibility, is that you can only have so much flexibility and still meet a timeline. So what is your anticipation with, I suppose, approvals and a site start and all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think it's still feeling, we probably had a little bit of space when we let both, and this is just an interview kind of meet and greet stage when we said, this is the timeline for kind of development of plans. We have a somewhat educated understanding of the way we'd need to work with council, but we'd be relying on you. And we would ideally love to be breaking ground, not necessarily before Christmas, but a little bit after. We kind of got confirmation, most importantly, I think, from the builder to say, well, that's good to hear. You've got healthy expectations around how long this might take. If we chose to, we could try and accelerate and be faster, but equally, if you're saying that you don't want to be this year, then that's ideal. I think probably it's a good time to ask that question again, because we got to first and second round spatial plans pretty quickly, I would say, but it's now that trading, I guess, as we try and maintain the house vision, but make adaptations, that I feel like we've probably eaten, I'd say, a month of the buffer we did have. So I think it's worthwhile just checking back in and saying, all right, we're actually still not there. The elevations come through next week. I think it's a good point in time just to do a timeline check to say, and as you pointed out, all together, saying, how do we collectively feel about where we are? Because it doesn't help if 3 out of the 4 of us agree. 4 of us need to. So yeah, I think it's a good call out. We haven't had intentional conversations about timing creep, but I think with the delivery of the next set of plans mid next week, and when we all sit around a table to look at it, I think it's worthwhile, because if we're still trying to find that 50 to 100, then yeah, it's not just a budget conversation, there's a timing conversation. So probably into next week's a good time to trigger it.
Yeah, we did have, in the initial timeline that the architect gave us, we had about a 3.5 to 4 month buffer. So that's pretty healthy. And as Zane said, we've probably eaten into, I reckon, maybe one month to 1.5 months of that buffer. So yeah, let's put on our agenda to ask that question.
How long are things supposed to take with council for your approvals?
Thankfully, we don't have any overlays or need any permits that usually take a long time. We'll obviously need a building permit. And from memory, it has all been factored into the timeline. From memory, was it? Oh, I'm just guessing. I don't know how long the architect put into his timeline, but it was in there.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's end of July. It will take the builder probably 6 to 8 weeks to prepare your final contract cost. And so you'll lose 2 months where you might be able to obviously be resolving some details and organising things and that kind of stuff, but you'll want your documentation and all of your selections done in order for the builder to do an accurate costing proposal. So yeah, so there'll be a 2-month chunk that'll come out, and the builder will probably want to finish up work mid-December and may not be back until middle to end of January. So so obviously there's sort of a 2-month, there's a 2-month period over Christmas, and then there's a 2-month costing period then those two things won't overlap with each other. So
good watch out.
Yeah. It was interesting having a conversation with Janet on the podcast and her talking about that process of navigating through the contract. And she had a builder start just prior to Christmas, and she said it would have actually been better if they'd started afterwards, and we could have used that time to really make sure that all of our selections were right, and that any final adjustments we needed costing on the costs were sorted. It gave them, they obviously used some of that opportunity to be able to go and visit the window manufacturer, for example, and go and make all of those kinds of. So just obviously you are also understanding your timeline, what the end of a school year is like in terms of your schedules, and giving yourself the space to be able to go to bathroom showrooms, to be able to, and it could also be worthwhile you're having a chat with the builder now. Who are your normal suppliers that you work with? Like, do you always buy from Reese? Do you always buy from Caroma? Like, can we go somewhere and start looking at, because he'll have figured out, okay, based on this project, your tile allowances are going to be roughly this.
Yeah.
Your sanitary ware is going to be roughly this. And it's like, okay, well, what product level is that for us? Can we start going and looking at those items now? And knowing that you can run the risk, obviously, of an item being discontinued or, those kinds of things. But at least you're seeing, is that the level that we had in our head as well? Can we make some of these selections really confidently now because we know that that's exactly what we want? Or is it going to take us a little bit longer of holding on to samples and, putting together palettes and things like that? Because your architect, obviously being an interior designer, it sounds like they will have a particular sequence that they not ordinarily work to, but you will speed up that process if you're able to make decisions about what they're doing far faster. And so if you've done some legwork ahead of time of just seeing it, is the price point reflective of the range of products you were hoping you'd get to choose from? Is there any wiggle room in that? Like, are you going to be able to save some cash because you were thinking, oh no, we're happy with this versus what the builder was assuming we wanted?
Yeah.
Or is it going to require more cash to make some of those decisions? And then you can start, you've got the templates for selections inside Home Method. You can start sort of populating some of those schedules. You've got your shopping list inside Home Method. You can start sort of working through the kinds of selections that you have to make. And I think if you can inform that with some of that costing information, I know it can feel counterintuitive to be doing that when you're still thinking about the overall design, but you're going to need a bath, a tap, kitchen stuff. You're going to need all of these kinds of things regardless. And so you starting to take some time now rather than all that time being taken in that crunchy part of the project when you are going to be at the pointy end and wanting to start as soon as possible. What I don't want you to do is sign a contract with a bunch of provisional sums and PC items and had not made those selections.
Yeah.
So I think that for a homeowner, some of the stuff that you can hold and touch can sometimes be easier to make a decision about than the spaces. And so when you start to see, okay, this is kind of the textural quality, or this is sort of the feel and the look, and you can, stand in a showroom and sort of see how it's all coming together, that can help you start to picture some of the spatial stuff a little bit more productively as well, because you've got something real to apply against what that room might look like and, that kind of stuff. So, and I think it can start building the overall, I suppose, atmosphere and feeling for you in your head, and it can be an exciting and fun thing to do as well. So, and understanding who the builder already works with means that you can be shortcutting a lot of that decision making for yourself as well. So the builder may say, look, I can buy from anyone, but I guarantee they will have people they prefer to work with because they can rely on the delivery.
I've had that conversation definitely with plumbing and tapware, and the builder's got a sort of multi-generational relationship that their father worked with these. So that's really good because he's already shared that with the architect to say, tell me where you're going from a vision point of view, and we'll stay connected, obviously, with Zane and Lou on that, because there's not much we can't source, but let me also connect you with the relationships I already have so that we can try and make selections that are going to allow us to save money down the line. So it's good that those conversations have initiated, but
awesome.
Yeah, that's an exciting part to look forward to, I think, as well. And I think what we're expecting as we go to elevations next week was also a few, instead of just I guess inspiration plucked from the net, we'll start to have some materials that we can touch. And that'll make a difference too, because even in some of the mood boards that have been offered, I really love the use of timber as a way to connect inside and outside. But as we look at some of the imagery, we're like, oh, it looks a bit dark, which is how the house was when we first arrived. And the architect's like, let me just bring the materials so you can see them and touch them and look at them under the right light. And I'm looking forward to that because it'll start to make it a bit more real. than a 2D plan.
That sounds awesome. It's super exciting, and it's great to see and hear how collaboratively you're working together. Like, I think that is going to be a really great thing. So as long as you keep that communication open, and your attitude of let's just bring up the question, let's not wait, is a really great one to have as well. So it's really lovely hearing your update. Before we wrap up, did you have any questions that you wanted to quickly ask me before we finish up this update?
No.
No? Oh, good. It's doing its job. That's all good. No, I think it's I think you're doing really well. And so as I said, I would just suggest that you obviously, it's that, we talk about the meter and the millimeter decisions, and really I think that homeowners wait to sequentially work through them. They sort of they focus on the meter decisions and then wait time to work on the 1 millimeter decisions. But some of those 1 millimeter decisions impact the 1 meter kind of outcomes that you're having. So really, and the architect will be naturally doing this in their head anyway, because as an architect, it's what you're doing. You're constantly jumping between those micro and those macro decisions as you're making decisions about where lines go on pages. So don't fear having the conversation about the macro to the micro at any time. And if the architect says, okay, just park that, then make sure you make a note of it somewhere in your notes so that you've got the opportunity to remind yourself. Don't rely on the architect remembering to bring it up, down the track. So it's keeping that paper trail of those. Okay, we need to make sure that we discuss this down the track. So can I just ask, are minutes being made of design meetings and circulated to you after the fact?
No.
Okay. Make sure you make some notes of those design meetings. You won't remember all the verbal conversations, and it'll just help you. It's one of those things that it's great to have when ideally you never need them, but it's great to have in case you do. So just coming back, and I wish design professionals would do this as just a matter of course. And if any architects or building designers are listening to this podcast, please, just at the end of a design meeting, you just need to note down the things that were discussed, the action steps that were decided, pop it in an email and circulate it to the team. In the absence of architects and designers doing it, I know some builders who are pack process trained and working in the pack process are now taking it upon themselves to do it. In the absence of either of those parties doing it, you as a homeowner should definitely do it just to manage your risk overall.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a good watch out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Louise and Zane, for joining me. It's been absolutely awesome to catch up with you. I'm really looking forward to the next update. And thank you so much for sharing your progress with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks,
awesome
William.
to hear your feedback.